have broken bones, had kidney stones, went through emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix when I was 37. I know physical pain. I understand it. You take medication, you heal, you move on. Physical pain has an expiration date. But the worst pain I've ever felt didn't come from my body. It came from my family, from the people I would have died for without hesitation, from my wife, my children, my brother, my mother. The people who were supposed to be my safe place became the ones who hurt me most deeply, most permanently, most devastatingly. I'm 60 years old now, and I carry those wounds every single day. Not because I want to, not because I haven't tried to heal, but because betrayal from the people you love doesn't heal the same way a broken bone does. It changes you fundamentally. It rewrites your understanding of trust, of safety, of love itself. Let me start with my mother. That seems appropriate since she's where all my patterns began. Eleanor was her name, though I only ever called her Mom. She was a small woman, barely 5'2", with iron gray hair she wore in a tight bun and eyes that could cut through steel. She raised 4 children alone after my father left when I was 8. No child support, no help, just her working 2 jobs and keeping us fed and clothed through sheer force of will. I admired her, worshipped her, really. She was everything to me, my hero, my protector, my entire world. I was the oldest, and I took that responsibility seriously. Helped with my younger siblings, got a paper route at 12 to contribute money, never complained, never caused trouble. I wanted to make her life easier, wanted to be the son who made up for my father's abandonment. She told me constantly that I was the good one, the responsible one, the one she could count on. My brother Tommy was the troublemaker, stealing, lying, getting into fights. My sisters Lisa and Beth were too young to be much help, but me? I was her rock, her salvation. I believed that, needed to believe it. Being Mom's favorite was my entire identity. When I was 17, I got accepted to college, a small state school, but still, college, a full scholarship, because my grades were good and we were poor enough to qualify for maximum aid. It was my ticket out, my chance to build something better. Mom cried when I told her. At first I thought they were happy tears. Then she said it. You're going to leave me just like your father did. The comparison gutted me. I was nothing like my father. I'd spent 9 years proving I was nothing like him. Mom, it's just a few hours away. I'll come home on weekends. I'll still help. Tommy's getting worse. He's going to end up in jail or dead, and you won't be here to help me manage him. Your sisters need a male role model. You're abandoning us. Abandoning. That word hung in the air like poison gas. I'll commute, I heard myself say. I don't have to live on campus. I can take classes and come home every night. Her face brightened instantly. You'd do that? Oh, Walter, I knew I could count on you. You're such a good son. So I commuted. 2 hours each way. 4 hours a day on buses and trains. Took classes, rushed home, help with dinner, help with homework. Broke up Tommy's fights. Drove Mom to her night shift. Collapsed into bed exhausted. Did that for 4 years. I barely made friends. Never went to campus events. Never joined clubs or dated or did any of the things college students do. I was too busy being the good son, the reliable one, the one who didn't abandon his family. I graduated with honors, but without any real college experience, without connections or networking or memories. Just a degree and a deep, bone-tired exhaustion that I told myself was noble sacrifice. After graduation, I got a job at an insurance company. Decent pay, benefits, room for advancement. I moved into the basement of Mom's house. She'd bought a small place by then, and the basement had a separate entrance. Close enough to help, she said. Close enough to keep me tethered. Kami was 19 by then, already in and out of jail for petty theft. Lisa was 16 and pregnant. Beth was 14 and barely going to school. The family was imploding, and I was supposed to hold it together. I gave Mom money every month, paid for Tommy's lawyer fees, helped Lisa with baby expenses, drove Beth to school when she'd miss the bus. I was 22 years old, making decent money, and I had nothing. No savings, no social life, no future beyond being the family's solution to every problem. My friends from high school, the few I'd kept in touch with, started getting married, buying houses, building lives. I was still living in my mother's basement, still on call 24/7 for whatever crisis erupted next. I told myself it was temporary, that once things stabilized, I'd move out, start my own life. But there was always another crisis. Tommy got arrested again. Lisa's baby daddy left. Beth got expelled. The crises never stopped, and neither did my obligation to fix them. I met Janet when I was 28. She was a claims adjuster at work, pretty and kind, with a laugh that made me feel normal for the first time in years. We started dating, and for a few months, I felt like maybe I could have something for myself. Then Mom got sick, pneumonia that turned serious. She called me from the hospital, her voice weak and frightened, and said she needed me. I spent every evening at the hospital. Janet understood at first. Then weeks turned into months. Mom's recovery was slow, complicated by her refusing to rest or follow doctor's orders. Janet started making comments about how I was always at my family's beck and call, how I didn't prioritize our relationship, how she felt like she was dating a ghost. I have responsibilities, I told her. You have a family that takes advantage of you, she replied. We fought about it constantly. She wanted me to set boundaries, to say no sometimes, to build a life that wasn't completely consumed by my mother and siblings. I wanted her to understand that family came first, that I couldn't just abandon them. The irony of that word, abandon, didn't hit me until years later. Janet gave me an ultimatum, her or them. I had to choose. I chose them. Told myself it was the right thing to do, that Janet was being selfish, that family was forever. Janet left, and I buried my heartbreak under more obligations, more crisis management, more being the good son. I didn't date seriously again for 6 years. At 34, I met Diane. She was different from Janet, quieter, more understanding. She'd come from a big family too, understood obligation and duty. When I explained about my family situation, she nodded sympathetically, said she admired my loyalty. We got married when I was 36. Small wedding because I was paying for Tommy's latest legal troubles and couldn't afford anything fancy. Diane said she didn't mind. She just wanted to build a life together. We moved into our own place. Finally, after 36 years, I moved out of my mother's house. It felt like freedom, like maybe I could finally be something other than the family's designated fixer. Mom took it as a personal betrayal, stopped speaking to me for 3 months. When I'd call, she'd give one-word answers, make me feel guilty for abandoning her. Eventually, I started going over every Sunday for dinner, and the freeze thawed. But there was always this undercurrent of resentment, this sense that I'd committed treason by getting married. Diane and I tried to have kids right away. We wanted a family, wanted to do it right, wanted to build something healthy and whole. But months turned into years, and nothing happened. Tests revealed I had fertility issues, low sperm count, low motility. The doctor said it wasn't impossible, just very unlikely. I was devastated. Diane was devastated. We looked into fertility treatments, but they were expensive and not covered by insurance. I had savings by then. I'd finally started putting money away, building something for our future. Then Tommy got arrested again. Serious charges this time. He was looking at real prison time unless we could afford a good lawyer. Mom called me crying, begging for help. He was her baby, she said, her son. How could I let him go to prison? I took the money we'd saved for fertility treatments and paid for Tommy's lawyer. Diane cried when I told her. Said we'd never have kids if we kept prioritizing my family over our own. I said Tommy was family too, that I couldn't let him go to prison when I had the means to help. The lawyer got Tommy probation. He was out 6 months before he violated it and went to prison anyway. The money was gone. The treatments never happened. Diane never forgave me. Our marriage became cold after that. She'd wanted children desperately, and I'd chosen my screw-up brother over her dream, over our dream. She was right to resent me. I resented myself. We stayed together, but stopped being partners, became roommates who occasionally had sad, perfunctory sex and mostly avoided each other. I threw myself into work. She threw herself into volunteering. We coexisted in the same house like two lonely people who'd given up on happiness. When I was 42, my mother had a heart attack. Not fatal, but serious. The doctor said she needed to make lifestyle changes, reduce stress. She was 65, still working part-time because she'd never saved for retirement. Still taking care of Lisa's kids because Lisa was unreliable. Still bailing Tommy out emotionally and financially every time he got out of prison. I moved her into our house. Diane and I had a spare bedroom, and Mom couldn't afford to live alone anymore. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. She lived with us for 13 years. 13 years of her criticizing Diane's cooking, her housekeeping, her choice to work instead of staying home. 13 years of her calling me at work with emergencies that weren't emergencies. 13 years of her making me feel guilty for having a life outside of caretaking her. Diane lasted 8 of those years before she filed for divorce. I came home one day to find her bags packed and papers on the table. She looked at me with this empty expression and said she was done. Done competing with my mother for space in my own house. Done being made to feel inadequate in her own home. Done being married to someone who'd never choose her. I did choose you, I said. I married you. You married me and moved your mother in. You took our fertility money and gave it to your brother. You spent 16 years putting everyone else first, and I'm tired of being last. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but she was right. I had always put them first, because they needed me more. Because Mom had drilled into me that I was the good one, the responsible one, the one who didn't abandon family. Diane left. The divorce was quick, uncontested. We'd accumulated almost nothing in 16 years of marriage, because every extra dollar went to my family. She took her clothes and her books and walked away from the marriage like it was a bad job she'd finally quit. I told Mom about the divorce, expecting sympathy. Instead, she smiled slightly and said, "Well, she was never right for you anyway." That smile, that tiny, satisfied smile. In that moment, I understood something I'd been too blind to see for 42 years. My mother didn't want me to be happy. She wanted me to be available. She'd sabotaged every relationship, every opportunity, every chance I had at building my own life, because my purpose was to serve her needs. But even seeing it, I couldn't break free. The programming was too deep. I was the good son, the responsible one, the one who didn't abandon his family. Tommy got out of prison when I was 47. He moved in with us, me and Mom, because he had nowhere else to go. I was 53 years old, divorced, living with my 75-year-old mother and my 45-year-old convicted felon brother in a house that had never felt like home. Tommy stole from me. Small things at first, $20 here, $40 there. Then bigger things, my laptop, my watch, tools from the garage. He'd sell them for drug money and lie to my face about it. I confronted him. He cried, apologized, promised to do better. Mom defended him, said he was struggling, that I needed to be more understanding, more supportive, that family helps family. He stole my credit card numbers and racked up $8,000 in charges before I caught it. When I confronted him, he got angry. Said I'd always been Mom's favorite, but I'd had it easy, that I owed him. I pressed charges. For the first time in my life, I held Tommy accountable instead of covering for him. He went back to prison. Mom stopped speaking to me entirely this time. For 6 months, I lived in my own house with my mother, who refused to acknowledge my existence. She'd make dinner for herself and leave nothing for me. She'd watch TV in the living room and turn the volume up when I came in. She'd tell my sisters I'd betrayed Tommy, turned on family, proven I was just like our father. The comparison still stung, even after all those years. Lisa called me in tears. How could you do that to Tommy? He's your brother. Mom's heart is breaking. Beth sent me an email, listing every way I'd failed the family. How I was selfish and self-righteous and had always thought I was better than everyone else. They were rewriting history. All those years of me sacrificing everything, all the money I'd given, all the crises I'd solved, none of it mattered. The one time I'd set a boundary, the one time I'd said enough, I became the villain. I sat in my house, alone despite my mother living upstairs, alienated from my siblings, divorced, childless, 53 years old with nothing to show for my life, but a career I didn't care about, and a family that hated me for finally standing up for myself. That was my lowest point, not when Janet left, not when Diane divorced me, not when Tommy stole from me, but when I realized that 53 years of devotion, sacrifice, and loyalty meant nothing, that I'd built my entire identity around being the good son, and the moment I acted in my own interest, that identity was revoked. I started therapy for the first time in my life. Dr. Helen Morrison, a woman in her 60s, who specialized in family trauma. I told her everything. She listened without judgment, and then said something that broke me open. Walter, your family didn't betray you. They behaved exactly as they'd been trained to behave. You betrayed yourself. You taught them that your needs didn't matter, that you existed to serve them. And then you're shocked when they believed you. She was right. I'd spent my entire life training my family to use me, rewarding their dysfunction with my money and time and energy, never setting boundaries, never saying no, never asking for anything in return. I'd betrayed myself first, and that betrayal had cost me everything. Mom died when I was 55, heart failure, quick and relatively painless. I was with her at the end, holding her hand. Her last words to me were about Tommy, asking me to look after him when she was gone. Even dying, she was asking me to sacrifice more. I didn't promise, just sat there holding her hand until she slipped away. The funeral was strange. Lisa and Beth cried dramatically, made speeches about what a saint Mom had been. Tommy, out on parole, looked uncomfortable in his ill-fitting suit. I felt nothing, just a vast emptiness where grief should have been. After the funeral, we went to a lawyer to settle the estate. I assumed there wouldn't be much. Mom had never had money. But there was a life insurance policy, $150,000. She'd left it all to Tommy. Every cent. To Tommy, who'd been in and out of prison, who'd stolen from her, who'd never contributed anything. Nothing to Lisa or Beth, nothing to me. The betrayal was stunning. 55 years of being the good son, the responsible one, the one who sacrificed everything. And in the end, she'd given everything to the child, who'd given her nothing but heartbreak. The lawyer handed me an envelope. This was with the will, he said. Inside was a letter in Mom's shaky handwriting. Walter, I know you'll be upset about the insurance money, but Tommy needs it more than you do. You've always been fine. You're strong, capable. You don't need me to take care of you. But Tommy does. He's never been able to take care of himself, and without me, he'll have nothing. I'm counting on you to understand. You always understand. You're the good one. Love, Mom. I read that letter 3 times. Each time I felt something inside me crumble. She'd known how much I'd sacrificed, known how much I'd given, known that I'd destroyed my own life taking care of everyone else. And she'd decided I didn't deserve anything because I was strong enough to survive without her help. My reward for being responsible was getting nothing. My punishment for being reliable was being taken for granted until the very end. Tommy spent the entire inheritance in 18 months. Drugs, mostly. Some on a car that got repossessed, some on a girlfriend who left when the money ran out. When he called asking for help, I said no. He called me selfish, said I'd always been selfish, always thought I was better than him. I hung up and never answered his calls again. Lisa and Beth were angry at me for cutting Tommy off, said I was being cruel, vindictive, using my anger at Mom against our brother. I tried to explain about boundaries, about enabling, about how giving Tommy money was just helping him destroy himself faster. They didn't want to hear it. I became the family pariah, the brother who turned his back when times were tough, the son who couldn't forgive his mother for loving all her children equally. They didn't see the irony, didn't see that equally actually meant not at all, that Mom had loved us all as extensions of herself, as sources of validation or disappointment, never as separate people with our own needs and dreams. I stopped going to family gatherings, stopped calling on holidays. Slowly, deliberately, I extracted myself from the family system I'd been trapped in for 55 years. It felt like cutting off a limb. Painful, traumatic, bloody, but necessary. I'm 60 years old now. I live alone in a small condo I bought after selling Mom's house. I have a job I find tolerable, a few friends I've made through a divorce support group, a therapist I see every other week. I don't have a family. Not really. Tommy's in prison again, his third strike, life sentence this time. Lisa barely speaks to me. Beth sends a Christmas card every year with her kids' photos and a brief note. Nothing personal. My ex-wife Diane remarried years ago, has stepchildren, seems happy based on her Facebook profile that I probably shouldn't look at, but sometimes do. I have nothing to show for 60 years of life, no children, no partner, no close family, no accumulated wealth. It all went to lawyer fees and bailouts and supporting people who never once considered supporting me back. The worst pain I've ever felt wasn't losing Diane, though that hurt. Wasn't losing Janet, though that stung. Wasn't even Mom leaving everything to Tommy, though that broke something fundamental. The worst pain is the cumulative realization that I built my entire identity around being needed, being useful, being the good son, and in doing so, I never developed an identity beyond that. I'm 60 years old, and I don't know who Walter is when he's not sacrificing for someone else. The worst pain is understanding that the people I loved most, Mom, Tommy, Lisa, Beth, they didn't actually love me. They loved what I could do for them. The money I could provide, the problems I could solve, the stability I could offer. When I stopped providing those things, I stopped mattering. The worst pain is looking back at 60 years and seeing a life spent in service to people who would never have done the same for me, who took and took until there was nothing left of me, and then blamed me for having nothing left to give. The worst pain is knowing I let them, that I participated in my own destruction, that I could have said no at any point. At 17, when Mom guilted me into commuting to college. At 28, when I chose her over Janet. At 36, when I gave away our fertility treatment money. At 42, when I moved her into my house. I had agency. I made choices, and every choice I made was to prioritize others over myself, to betray my own needs in service to people who never once considered my needs at all. Dr. Morrison says I'm making progress, that recognizing these patterns is the first step, that I can still build a life even at 60, that it's not too late to figure out who I am beyond the role I was assigned at 8 years old. Some days I believe her. I've started taking piano lessons, something I always wanted to do but never had time for. I volunteer at a literacy program. I'm reading books, taking walks, doing small things that are just for me. Other days, the grief is overwhelming. The grief for the life I didn't live, the relationships I didn't have, the person I might have been if I hadn't been so thoroughly trained to believe my purpose was to sacrifice myself. I think about the boy I was at 17, smart, ambitious, with a full scholarship and a future ahead of him. I think about the choice he made to commute instead of live on campus, to stay tethered instead of fly. I think about how that one choice set the pattern for every choice that followed. And I think about my mother, small and gray and determined, telling him he'd be abandoning her if he left, using the word that would haunt him for the next 43 years, programming him to believe that having his own life was the ultimate betrayal. I can't forgive her. I've tried. Dr. Morrison says forgiveness is for me, not for her, but I can't get there. Can't forgive her for stealing my life and calling it love. Can't forgive her for using my sense of duty as a weapon to keep me trapped. Can't forgive her for teaching me that love means self-annihilation. I can't forgive Tommy for stealing from me, for never once considering that I had needs too, for calling me selfish when I finally set a boundary. Can't forgive Lisa and Beth for siding with him, for rewriting history, for punishing me for the crime of self-preservation. I can't even fully forgive Diane or Janet, though they did nothing wrong. They just had the misfortune of loving someone who'd already been hollowed out by obligation, who had nothing left to give because he'd given it all away before they ever met him. Most of all, I can't forgive myself for being so weak, for prioritizing being good over being whole, for believing that sacrifice was virtue when it was really just fear disguised as nobility. The worst pain I've ever felt was caused by the people I loved most, but they couldn't have hurt me if I hadn't given them the tools, if I hadn't taught them that hurting me was acceptable, if I hadn't modeled year after year that my pain didn't matter as long as theirs was addressed. I was complicit in my own destruction, and that knowledge that it didn't have to be this way, that I had choices and made terrible ones, that I betrayed myself before anyone else betrayed me, that's the worst pain of all. I'm 60 years old. If I'm lucky, I have maybe 20 more years. 20 years to figure out who I am when I'm not being used. 20 years to build something that's mine. 20 years to learn that love shouldn't hurt this much, shouldn't cost this much, shouldn't require the complete annihilation of self. It's probably too late for the big things: marriage, children, the career I might have had if I hadn't been exhausted from family crises. Those doors are closed, but maybe it's not too late for the small things: peace, contentment, self-knowledge, the quiet satisfaction of having boundaries and keeping them. The radical act of putting myself first, not in a selfish way, but in a survival way. Maybe it's not too late to stop betraying myself, to stop prioritizing everyone else's comfort over my own existence, to stop believing that my worth is measured by how much I can endure. Maybe it's not too late to learn that the people who love you don't systematically destroy you, don't take and take until you're empty and then blame you for being empty. Don't teach you that your purpose is to sacrifice while theirs is to receive. Maybe it's not too late to understand that what I thought was love was really just dysfunction dressed up in the language of family obligation. I'm trying. God, I'm trying. Some days are better than others. Some days I wake up and feel something close to hope. Other days I wake up and feel the weight of 60 years of betrayal, both received and self-inflicted, and I can barely get out of bed. But I keep going, keep taking my piano lessons, keep volunteering, keep seeing Dr. Morrison, keep putting one foot in front of the other, because the alternative is giving up entirely. And giving up would mean they won, would mean that all those years of destruction achieved their purpose. I refuse to let that be the end of my story. There are moments now when I catch glimpses of who I might have been. I'll be playing piano, stumbling through a piece I'm learning, and I'll hit a sequence of notes that sounds almost beautiful. In those moments, I feel something I haven't felt in decades, pride in myself, not for what I've done for others, but for something I'm doing just because it brings me joy. Last month, I went on a date. First one in over a decade. A woman named Patricia from the literacy program, a widow around my age who volunteers on the same nights I do. We got coffee, talked for 2 hours. She told me about her late husband, about her grandchildren, about the garden she's building in her backyard. I told her about the piano, about the walks I take, about the therapy. I didn't tell her about my family, didn't mention the decades of dysfunction, the betrayals, the money lost, the relationships destroyed. Not because I was hiding it, but because for those 2 hours, I wanted to just be Walter. Not the failed son, the divorced husband, the brother who got cut off. Just Walter, a 60-year-old man having coffee with a nice woman. She asked me out again. We're seeing a movie this weekend. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, and that's okay. The point isn't to replace what I lost or to fill the void my family left. The point is that I'm trying. I'm showing up for my own life, maybe for the first time ever. Dr. Morrison says trauma creates patterns that echo through your entire life unless you consciously interrupt them. She says my pattern was to seek validation through sacrifice, to prove my worth by disappearing. Every relationship became an opportunity to replay the same dynamic. Me giving everything, them taking everything. Me resenting them while simultaneously feeling virtuous about my suffering. Breaking that pattern requires vigilance. Every day I have to actively choose myself. Have to notice when I'm slipping back into old behaviors, offering help I can't afford to give, saying yes when I mean no, prioritizing someone else's comfort over my own needs. It's exhausting. 52 years of programming doesn't disappear just because you recognize it's programming. The instinct to sacrifice is still there, hardwired into my nervous system. The guilt when I set a boundary is still crushing. The voice in my head, Mom's voice, still tells me I'm selfish, ungrateful, just like my father. But I'm learning to talk back to that voice, to remind myself that self-care isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't abandonment, that choosing myself doesn't make me like my father. It makes me finally, belatedly, an adult who understands that you can't give from an empty cup. I think about alternate timelines sometimes. The life I might have lived if I'd gone away to college, if I'd chosen Janet, if I'd kept the fertility money, if I'd never moved Mom into my house. In those timelines, maybe I'm a father. Maybe I'm still married. Maybe I have a career I'm passionate about, friends I've known for decades, a life that feels full instead of hollowed out. But I try not to dwell there too long. That way lies madness. I can't change the past, can't get back those years, can't undo the choices I made or the pain those choices caused. All I can do is live differently now, make different choices, build a different future with whatever time I have left. Sometimes people ask me if I regret cutting off my family, if I miss them, if there's any chance of reconciliation. The honest answer is complicated. Do I regret it? No. Setting boundaries was the healthiest thing I've ever done. Do I miss them? I miss the idea of them, miss the fantasy of a family that loved me unconditionally, that valued my presence beyond my utility. But I don't miss the reality, the constant crises, the emotional manipulation, the financial drain, the systematic destruction of my sense of self. As for reconciliation, I'm open to it, but only on my terms. If Lisa or Beth ever want a real relationship, one where we actually know each other as people instead of roles, I'd consider it. But I won't go back to being a fixer, the bank, the designated absorber of everyone's problems. Tommy, I'll probably never speak to again. He's serving life, and even if he weren't, I don't think there's anything left to salvage there. Some relationships are too poisoned, too damaged, too fundamentally built on dysfunction to ever be healthy. The grief comes in waves, not for the family I lost. They were never really mine to lose, but for the man I could have been, for the husband Diane deserved, the partner Janet needed, the father I'll never be, for the version of Walter who wasn't so broken by obligation that he forgot how to be whole. That grief is its own kind of pain, different from the acute betrayal of Mom's will or Tommy's theft or my siblings' rejection. This pain is quieter, more persistent. It lives in my chest like a stone, a constant reminder of everything that could have been different if I'd just been brave enough to choose myself. But I'm choosing myself now, at 60. Late, but not too late. Never too late, Dr. Morrison insists, to start living authentically. Never too late to prioritize your own well-being. Never too late to understand that the people who truly love you won't require your complete destruction as proof of that love. Patricia and I are having coffee again next week before the movie. She's teaching me about gardening, says it's therapeutic, watching things grow under your care. I'm thinking about starting a small garden on my condo's balcony. Tomatoes, maybe. Herbs. Something living that I'm responsible for, but that won't destroy me in the process of caring for it. Small steps. That's what healing looks like at 60. Not grand gestures or dramatic transformations. Just small, consistent steps toward a life that doesn't hurt. Toward relationships that nourish instead of deplete. Toward a version of myself that exists beyond the roles I was assigned. The worst pain I ever felt was caused by the people I loved most. That's a truth I'll carry forever. But I'm learning to carry other truths alongside it. That I survived. That I'm still here. That even at 60, even after everything, I still have the capacity to grow, to change, to choose differently. That the story isn't over. That there might still be chapters worth writing. That maybe, just maybe, the second half of my life can be about something other than sacrifice and suffering. About something that actually feels like living.